and then this giant arm of creatures, this like almost like an ant bridge, right, comes up from the abyss and reaches out towards them. And we have this one shot just on the side where you can see stuff like kind of coming from underneath the camera towards where Keiko is hanging precariously above. And like that's both like a shot that I love creatively, but it's also a huge technical challenge because you've got 1,000 creatures animated through a crowd cycle, and then you have like the entire environment is coming apart around you. Both a challenge and then like a shot that just compositionally I absolutely loved. And it was one of those things where the storyboard artist did this really awesome frame, and I'm like, we need to make that as good as possible.
Hey, Sean, how you doing?
Great. How are you doing?
We are doing so well. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us on the movie podcast today. We are blown away by the scale of this show. And, you've gotten to work on the film side of Godzilla in the past. So I'm curious, did you ever think that a story that size would be able to be told in live action form in a serial way on TV?
It's part of what drew me to the show, honestly, is that like while I was an artist on Godzilla 2014 and working on stuff like Godzilla's Heat Ray and like like going in and doing all the fine detailing stuff, I was like, okay, this would be I started thinking about it. Like Bong Joon-ho's The Host is one of my favorite movies of all time, and that's such like a human driven story where the monsters reflect the fears of your primary characters. And this felt like, when I saw the script, I was like, oh, they figured it out. This is how we could do this kind of thing. So yeah, I always had confidence it could be done, but definitely wasn't sure if it should be done until I saw this.
It's true, and I think that's one of the things when Shay and I were watching the series, we were just like, wow, like they are able to pull this off. Like we are watching a show, like it feels like a movie in episodic form, which is such a huge accomplishment. So congratulations to you, the entire team that made it happen.
Yeah, absolutely, a huge team across the planet. Over 1,200 people, 15 different companies. All over the world worked in the visual effects department on this.
Wow.
Amazing. I'm curious, when you're looking at a movie and you've got about 2 hours and not a handful, but a lot of VFX shots, especially with Godzilla. On the TV side of things, do you find that you have more VFX shots that you have to kind of get out there? And I'm curious, how many more, and what's that difference like between working on them both?
Some of the features, like I think King of the Monsters had a really huge shot count on it. But like for a TV series, yeah, you're taking like a really great budget, but you're stretching that out into over 8 hours of TV, right? Like it's a different equation of how you use that. And so for me, a lot of the question is, how do you make your action set pieces, one, reflect the interiority of your characters in a smart way, but how do you also, make them punchy and memorable and iconic? And so that means every shot needs to characterize your monsters. Every environment needs to be as as explicit about the storytelling as you possibly can. And that stuff ends up being really hard. You might have like in a feature, you might have like 10 shots to describe an environment where you have like one, and another thing that was a real challenge here is we really wanted to ground our point of view in our characters. We don't want to just like arbitrarily go to like some big drone camera that's flying through everything and flying. We if we do that, we have to earn it. We have to earn it by really placing you in the action with the people.
Yeah, you really felt that a lot, especially when everyone's starting to look up. And this is something that even from the 2014 film, I always felt that the scale of Godzilla is the most massive way we've ever seen it. Something that we don't typically get. You always just kind of see, oh, here's Godzilla in comparison to a building. But when you're literally looking up at him, it's just massive.
Yeah, it's important to sell that scale, right?
Absolutely. So I'm curious, for yourself, what would you say was the most difficult VFX shot that you had? And also, what's your favorite VFX shot from the show?
Favorite is not something that anybody's seen and that I can't spoil.
I meant to preface that.
From the first episode, and it's in a bunch of the trailers, so I can talk about it. Like there's a shot of, so in the first episode, you've got, this, they're exploring the basement of this abandoned plutonium plant, and you've got, all these eggs spread everywhere, and the eggs hatch and start tracing our characters out of the environment. And, there's like a half dozen or a dozen of these creatures coming towards them. They're like sort of slightly larger than dog-sized monsters, and so it's threatening on its own. And then you get up to, they start getting pulled up. It looks like they're going to escape, and then this giant arm of creatures, this like almost like an ant bridge, right, comes up from the abyss and reaches out towards them. And we have this one shot just on the side where you can see stuff like kind of coming from underneath the camera towards where Keiko is hanging precariously above. And like that's both like a shot that I love creatively, but it's also a huge technical challenge because you've got 1,000 creatures animated through a crowd cycle. With normally, like, if you have crowds, you're talking about like people walking around, and
right.
You can take the joint of the foot and glue that to the ground, right? Where this is like, okay, you've got all these creatures have like 20 appendages, and they're gonna like crash through each other, and you need to then sort of hand animate. It's hard to sim that stuff, so you need to hand animate,
right.
And then you have like the entire environment is coming apart around you, and you've got all these little like hits of things coming off of the creatures, yeah. So that both a challenge and then like a shot that just compositionally I absolutely loved. And it was one of those things where the storyboard artist did this really awesome frame, and I'm like, we need to make that as good as possible.
Yeah. Sean, we are, like I said, we're truly blown away by what you have been able to pull off with this series. We cannot wait to see where it goes and where future stories are told, and even just how, Vision Pro will change things down the road with it. So just thank you so much again for your time. We're so grateful, and we hope we get to talk to you again.
Thank you so much. Check it out November 17th on Apple TV+.